Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namani Namaste Saraswati Deve Guruvani Pucharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskatya Desatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhaktavindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Grantaraj ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanandi Haribol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we're going to continue our project of writing a book on the science of knowledge. And the following persons did their homework. One was Shitan and Shrestha, Sanmukh, Arush, Shivani, and that's it. So I want to start with Arush. I think he did a very, very good job today of doing the homework. So there are different questions that one had to answer. And we'll start. Arush, his first thing is look up what is first degree, second degree, and third degree murder, and what is manslaughter. Okay, so I'm not going to go over that, but he did that, and that's good. So the second question was expand the explanation of the material definition of knowledge and wisdom, and expand the spiritual definition of knowledge, or jnana and vijnana. Very good. So here's Arush's answer. Ajnana. The material definition of knowledge is facts, information, skills acquired by a person through experience or education, the theoretical or practical understanding of a subject. The material definition of wisdom is the quality of having experience, knowledge, and good judgment. The quality of being wise. The definition of knowledge, let's see. Okay, that's the material definition of wisdom. Okay. The definition of knowledge and wisdom in English is minus Krishna. Okay, so he said the material definition of knowledge is facts, information, skills acquired by a person through experience or education. And it's a theoretical understanding of a subject. And then the material definition of wisdom is the quality of having experience, knowledge, and good judgment. And it's the quality of being wise. And both of those are minus Krishna. Okay. Therefore, all knowledge that is being taught in schools is ajnana, or ignorance. As per Bhagavad Gita 4.10, material knowledge doesn't know about the transcendental body. And he says that there are three stages of material consciousness: attachment to material life, fear of a spiritual personal identity, and a conception of void that arises from frustration in life. Okay, so that's from Bhagavad Gita 4.10. As per Srimad Bhagvatam 1.12.28, material knowledge means ignorance of knowledge of one's own self. And now he explains what is jnana and vijnana. Jnana, there are three levels. So in other words, he's saying material knowledge is ajnana, or ignorance. especially ignorance of one's own self, one's relationship with God also. So now he's explaining what jnana is. Understanding the material nature, or prakriti. Understanding the difference between the soul, the individual soul, and the material body. And point number 3, understanding the presence of the individual soul and supersoul, or paramatma, in this body. And understanding that the individual soul, supersoul, paramatma, and the material nature, prakriti, everything comes from Krishna, including Narayana and Vishnu. Okay, so that's his understanding of jnana. It's mostly correct. And then vijnana means when acting in the relationship with Krishna, understanding the proper relationship with material nature, understanding the presence of the supersoul as the witness of everything we do, and understanding that the supreme goal of life is service to Krishna. One should render the devotional service under the guidance of bona fide spiritual master for the pleasure of Guru and Krishna. When we act based on jnana in relationship with Krishna, this is called vijnana. Therefore, if you will not act in relationship with Krishna when you have jnana, it is like taking medicine, jnana, from a doctor and not using it. Okay, so that was Arush's homework. So, good, pretty good, Arush. And thank you. Okay, so now, Shivani. Shivani's homework. So, look up the 4 universal principles of spirituality: mercy, cleanliness, truthfulness, and austerity. Correlate how the 4 universal principles of spirituality are broken when the 4 regulative principles are broken, such as meat eating, gambling, illicit connections, and intoxication. Okay? Yes, that is the homework. And Shivani writes, in the age of Kali, people are becoming very proud and they are very much attached to the opposite sex and intoxication. In Kali, women are always dressed in a way to attract men, and the men are addicted to drinking, smoking, tea, coffee, beer, etc. All these low-class habits are the root cause of irreligiosity. This makes it impossible to check corruption, bribery, and nepotism. Nepotism, of course, means if someone is a politician in a place of power, they give special benefits and positions to their own family members or people that are very loyal to them. These kinds of problems cannot be solved by changing the laws or calling the cops. These kinds of problems can only be solved with the right medicine. The solution to these problems is given in the Srimad Bhagvatam 1:17-24. Prabhupada says in a purport that by supporting the principles of Brahminical culture, namely austerity, kindness, mercy, and truthfulness, the disease of irreligiosity can be solved. Modern civilizations and economic development are causing poverty and scarcity, with a result of blackmailing the customers' commodities. Now, let's just discuss that for a minute. How is it that by economic development it creates poverty? Well, we see one example of it. The more economic development there's in Seattle, at the same time there's a lot more homelessness. So why is this? What's the cause of this? Well, it's because people create unemployment by becoming more technologically advanced. Like one tractor will eliminate 100 jobs on a farm. Because a tractor with different implements, you can do so many functions. Of course, it's very expensive to buy that tractor and the different implements, But you can do so many functions that eliminates the need for workers. And artificial intelligence will create many, will cause the loss of many jobs because as companies rely more on robotics, they fire more and more employees. So in the next 10, 15 years, almost half the jobs in America can be lost due to artificial intelligence. Like, for example, farm workers. They build these farms now that are almost completely automated. And so that eliminates many farm workers. The automation includes planting of seeds and then you get these starts, and then there are robots that can plant the starts and then water them and etc. So many jobs are being eliminated in farming, and now also eventually in internet business. Many of the jobs, the engineers will be replaced by robots. In medical field, many surgeons and other healthcare workers can be eliminated with robots. And in almost every industry, they're switching over to robots to do the work, because robots can work 24 hours a day. They don't take vacations. They don't need to be paid. They don't need Social Security. They don't need sick leave. Of course, sometimes they break down, but you can hire people to come and fix them. So many people are potentially going to lose their jobs in the next 15 years due to robotics. Okay, so Prabhupada says in the purport to 11724 that by supporting the principles of Brahminical culture, namely austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness, the disease of irreligiosity can be solved. Modern civilizations and economic development are causing poverty and scarcity, with the result of blackmailing the customer's commodities. Well, what she's trying to say there is that modern civilization and economic development are causing poverty and scarcities. Well, how is it causing scarcity when they have genetically modified seeds that are resistant to insects and different types of plant diseases? But what happens is they also don't produce seeds. So then the farmer is obliged to buy every year the fertilizer, and then so therefore the more technology there is in the food industry, the more exclusivity there is to having to buy the products from the manufacturers every year. Whereas if you work without all those modern techniques, you can produce your own seeds every year. You don't have to buy seeds. You can make your own compost every year. You don't have to buy fertilizer. You can do so many things on your own. But it would require a little more manpower. But that's good, because the more people working, the less time they have for doing nonsense. But if all the jobs are replaced by robots, or many jobs, or most jobs are replaced by robots, you're going to have a lot of idle people. And an idle mind is a devil's workshop. So when your mind is not filled with Krishna consciousness, it'll be filled with gobar, or cow dung, or urine, therefore it's degrading for people to be not active and dependent on checks coming from the government, and having plenty of leisure time where they become lazy and intoxicated and so forth. Jai Shri Shri Radha Nilamadhava Ki Jai. Okay, so this economic development will get, and technological development will create more unemployment, and that has its own problems also. People get lazy. They just want to eat, sleep, and have sense gratification and not work and just get a check every month. And it'll cause a lot of frustration and anger in the end. And we're seeing the result of it: looting and opposing police, opposing the government, fighting. Once the looting starts, then there's no honor amongst thieves, and then the thieves start fighting with each other also, and shooting each other and killing each other. So it's a very bad signal of social degradation. Then Prabhupada says, modern civilization and economic development are causing poverty and scarcity, with the result of blackmailing the customer's commodities. Well, the price of producing food eventually goes up. At first, it goes down because of the robots and getting people out of work, replacing them with robots. But then you have to increase taxes to pay the people who are not working. And eventually, when you have industrial agriculture, the plants are not that healthy. They look good, but they're not that healthy. And then eventually, it costs more money to produce the food. First of all, robots are very expensive, and they require a lot of maintenance. They can easily break down and have problems. So ultimately, although it looks like in the beginning you're saving money by eliminating so many workers, you're spending a lot of money maintaining the working of the robot. There are many parts that break down that have to be replaced. There's mistakes that you can make, and there's also vandalism. So you see, eventually the price of everything will go up. If rich leaders today spend half of their wealth to the uneducated mass of people and educate them in Krishna consciousness, Kali, or the age of Kali, will have less, will not entrap as many people and condition them. Too much pride in oneself increases one's attraction to the opposite sex, and intoxication drives a man away from peace. So, what leads people to not follow the Brahminical? What causes people to not follow the Brahminical way of life? The answer is simple: Maya. Just like how moths are captivated by light and they become prey to the fire, we are captivated by Maya and become prey to the fire of delusion. The Vedas instruct us to divert ourselves away from the darkness of ignorance, and they tell us to take the progressive path of light. Krishna even says how it is very hard to overcome the deluding power of material energy. Only souls who are surrendered can easily do so. But to surrender unto the Lord is not very easy either. Such surrender is only possible by the Brahminical principles of life: austerity, cleanliness, mercifulness, and truthfulness. In the Satya Yuga, everyone was a Brahmana because they would follow these four principles very well. No one was captivated by Maya, but as time passes, the basic principles of Brahminical culture, namely austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness, reduces by the development of pride, attachment for the opposite sex, and intoxication. How can we restore the principles of Brahminical culture? By the preaching of Bhagavad Gita. This will make all men austere, clean on the inside and out, merciful to suffering, and truthful to the daily behavior. by practicing the knowledge of Bhagavatam, the flaws of human society will be corrected. Okay, very good. Then she explains what is third-degree murder, voluntary third-degree murder, and involuntary third-degree murder. Okay, so let's take a look at the homework I gave you was to look up this verse 1:16:26, was it? Oh, 1:16:20. Okay. Yeah. Okay. However, I did ask you for extra credits to read the whole chapter 16. And I forgot to tell you about 1:17:35. In 1:17:35, write that down, 1:17:35. The verse says, Sutta Goswami said, Maharaj Parikshit, thus being petitioned by the personality of Kali, gave him permission to reside in places where gambling, drinking, prostitution, and animal slaughter were performed. Okay, so when Maharaj Parikshit is going to kill Kali, the personality of Kali Yuga, Kali surrenders to him and begs for mercy. So then Maharaj Parikshit is willing to let him stay in places, in 4 different types of places. But then Kali says, please, it's too hard. Your kingdom is so well managed, no one's interested in Maya. So I just feel harassed. Please give me some place where I won't be harassed so I can live there. So then Maharaj Parikshit, so first of all, he gives him permission to stay where there's gambling, drinking, prostitution, and animal slaughter. So Kali says, this almost doesn't exist in your kingdom because you're such a good king. So give me some other place where I can stay. Well, so what does Maharaj Parikshit say? He tells Kali that he can stay in a place where gold is hoarded, where people keep gold. So in the next verse, 1:17:39, the personality Kali asked for something more, and because of his begging, the king gave him permission to live where there is gold, because wherever there is gold, there's also falsity and intoxication, lust, envy, and greed. Well, very interesting point. This is 1:17:36 and 1:38 and 1:17:39. Okay, so wherever people are hoarding gold, that's a place where the 4 regulative principles will gradually be broken. So, in the beginning of the purport to 1:17:38, Prabhupada writes, the basic principles of irreligiosity, such as pride, prostitution, intoxication, and falsehood, counteract the 4 principles of religion, namely austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness. So here's the correlation of the four principles of religiosity or spirituality with the regulated principles. So 1 is pride. So what does pride do? It destroys austerity. Then prostitution destroys cleanliness. Intoxication, it destroys mercifulness. And falsehood or lying destroys truthfulness. So, now, how do we relate that to the 4 regulative principles? Meat eating, illicit sex, gambling, and intoxication. Okay. So, if a person who eats meat, what do? They either catch an animal themselves or they pay someone to catch an animal and kill it. But if they do it themselves, they eventually kill the animal, and they might freeze the flesh of the animal, or other ways preserving it in order to eat it at a later time. But they kill the animal, and then they cut it up, and then they can freeze it, and then they'll have to thaw it out and cook it. So when a person catches a chicken and kills it, or catches a cow and kills it, or catches a horse and kills it, they become proud because they have used their superior energy over the what you would call seemingly uneducated. They catch an animal that is mostly defenseless, and they kill it. It makes them proud that they have that power to do that. And therefore, this pride inflated by exploitation of people and animals and assets or commodities makes people proud. And pride destroys the ability to perform austerity. Now, you might say, well, wait a minute, there's the example of Hiranyakashipu and Ravana. They performed tremendous austerities. And yes, that's true. And because of those austerities, they got these benedictions, material benedictions. But because of their ability to do these austerities and their success in getting material assets and controlling matter and people, they become very proud. And that prideness, or the arrogance that comes with it, makes them blind to the consequences of such sinful activities. So therefore, you could say that meat eating destroys austerity. But the actual fact is that meat eating and any type of domination and exploitation for sense gratification makes one proud. And when they become proud and arrogant, they violate the principle of austerity. They're not able to perform austerities in the same way as before they had such power and exploitation. So, therefore, Ravana was often getting drunk every night. His wives also were drinking and dancing and entertaining him and engaging in nonsense. And he became, let's say, diverted in his attention. His ability to perform austerity and become powerful was broken by all that sense gratification. Okay, so we can say that pride destroys austerity, but the extension of the pride into dominating defenseless animals and people and assets, it just inflates the pride. And along with that, blindness to understanding reality. And then, secondly, prostitution or illicit connections destroys cleanliness. And number 3, intoxication destroys mercy. And number 4, telling lies, spreading misinformation and falsehoods destroys truthfulness. So today there's a lot of what you call fake news, made-up stories and speculative theories and explanation by so-called experts, such as in the coronavirus pandemic. All the projections made by great scientists were wrong. And because of that, it created a panic and overreaction, closing down the economy, making everyone stay at home, etc., closing down temples and churches. The whole thing was a hoax. It was not necessary to do that. So, misinformation and falsity destroys truthfulness. So those are the correlations between the four universal principles: mercy and truthfulness, cleanliness, austerity, are destroyed by pride, prostitution, intoxication, and falsehood. And further expanding that, it means that pride that comes from eating meat and exploiting others' assets as well as persons, and then destroys austerity and prostitution, illicit activities, destroys cleanliness, intoxication, destroys mercifulness, and lying and falsehood destroy truthfulness. Okay, so that was basically the homework. Now, I know that in the past, sometimes I said that meat eating destroys mercifulness, and illicit activities destroys cleanliness, and like lying destroys truthfulness, and the intoxication, meat eating destroys mercy. Actually, I said that intoxication destroys mercy. So, you see, we sometimes they're scrambled, but the correct understanding is pride, which can be extended to any type of exploitation one makes because of their pride and their false estimation of their powers, and that would include meat eating and so forth, destroys austerity. Prostitution or illicit activities destroys cleanliness, intoxication, it destroys mercy, and falsehood and lying and misinformation destroys truthfulness. Okay. So now, we're going to read another homework, this one by Shrestha. So we've done Arush, we've done Shrivani. There's also Sanmukh, Shritan. We'll read Shrestha now. Shrestha did a really great homework. I mean, all of you have done good homework. I'm very impressed by, the work you're doing. Okay, so Shrestha writes, the assignment is read Bhagavad Gita 13.5, verse and purport, study the Brahma Pucham, different levels of consciousness, and understand that human beings have different levels of consciousness. And 2, expand the explanation of the material definition of knowledge plus wisdom, and then the spiritual definition of jnana and vijnana, and references Bhagavad Gita 4.10 and Srimad Bhagvatam 1.12.28. Look up, number 3, look up the 4 universal principles of spirituality, then connect that to the 4 regulative principles. And the reference is 1.16.20. Okay. So read Bhagavad Gita 13.5, verse and purport, study the Brahma Pucham, and so forth. Okay, so 1. According to the Taittiriya Upanishad 2.5, there are 5 stages of Brahman realization, which are called the Brahma Pucham. The 5 stages of the Brahma Pucham outline the living entity's different levels of consciousness about the Lord. This is the Brahma Pucham. So there's 1, Anamaya, which is like gross body realization. And it's all about dependence on food for existence. In such a stage, food, which is one of the energies of the Lord, is the supreme object of realization. And the example, an infant. When a baby is born, they are not engaged in any activities except eating, sleeping, and crying. Well, you forgot pooping and peeing also. The baby's knowledge is so limited at this point that the only that they only know of the importance of food to survive. Yeah, I would say that's true. And animals. Animals do not have a higher consciousness like human beings do. Hence, they are stuck on the level of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Correct. And then number 2. So that's called anamoya. It's the first level of consciousness, that food is God. Then pranamoya. Pranamoya means realizing the supreme absolute truth in life forms and life symptoms. In such a stage, one realizes the importance of breathing, good health, exercise, etc. as means for preserving the body. One begins to think that maintaining good health, working hard, etc., is the ultimate realization. Okay. So that's pranamoya, recognizing life symptoms. This is my mother, this is my uncle, this is my auntie, this is my sister, this is my brother, like that. So the child is recognizing life symptoms in others. Okay. And then next is Jnanamoya. Jnanamoya level of consciousness extends beyond the living symptoms to the point of thinking, feeling, and willing. It's more cerebral. Cerebral means, write this word down, C-E, one second. One second. Cerebral means connected to the mind. Let me see how you spell that. Daniel, you know how to spell cerebral? Yes. C-E-R-E-B-R-A-L. Very good. So cerebral means of the brain, related to the mind. Okay, so therefore this next stage of consciousness or Brahman realization is called Jnanamoya. And Jnanamoya is realization extends beyond the living symptoms to the point of thinking, feeling, and willing. In this stage, one realizes the effects of the subtle body parts, such as emotions, appreciation of beauty, aesthetics, interactions between mind and intelligence, etc., to be the highest form of realization. Okay, so that's cerebral. It's like living in the mind. Rather than the mind is more subtle than the body. Okay. I just lost this. Let's see, where is it? This is a draft. Oh man. Okay. So now next is Vijnanamoya. and that is the living entity's mind and life symptoms are distinguished from the living entity himself. In other words, one begins to understand there's a difference between my soul and my body, both the gross body and the subtle body. And that one realizes he or she has an eternal soul instead of a temporary body. And that becomes the highest object of realization. It's called Vijnanamoya. So you have Anamoya, Pranamoya, and Manamoya, or Jnanamoya, and then Vijnanamoya, and then Anandamoya, realization of the all-blissful nature of the living entity in relationship to Krishna. This is the fifth and supreme stage of realization, in which the living entity realizes the distinction between the soul and the supersoul and establishes a loving relationship with the supersoul or Krishna. This becomes the living entity's highest form of realization. Okay? So that's Brahmapucham. So that's very well done. And next, explain the explanation of the material definition of knowledge and wisdom and the spiritual definition of jnana and vijnana. So, this Shresha now gives a detailed explanation, and I'm going to read most of it. So she says, the Oxford Dictionary states that knowledge is facts, information, and skills acquired by a person through experience or education. The theoretical or practical understanding of a subject. Knowledge is basically garnering a theoretical understanding of something. On the other hand, wisdom is defined as the quality of having experience, knowledge, and good judgment, the quality of being wise. Knowledge and wisdom have a distinct correlation. In other words, they have a unique relationship. Knowledge is theoretical understanding of a subject, while wisdom is having the ability to practically apply that knowledge to aspects of life. Okay, very good. And she writes, this is the material definition of knowledge and wisdom as given by the material philosophers. Yet there is another original definition of knowledge and wisdom given in the Vedas, which is explained in much more detail. According to the English dictionary, knowledge and wisdom are limited to material aspects only. The so-called philosophers don't even understand that real knowledge and wisdom is beyond just the material nature. According to Srila Prabhupada, material knowledge means ignorance of the knowledge of one's own self. Srimad Bhagvatam 1:12-28. This so-called knowledge lacks the fundamental truths of the self and God, and therefore is extremely limited. Real knowledge and wisdom, jnana and vijnana, is tied to our fundamental relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is eternal. According to Srila Prabhupada, real knowledge must explain self-realization. Philosophy or knowledge means to seek after the right knowledge of one's own self, or the knowledge of self-realization. Without self-realization, philosophy is dry speculation or a waste of time and energy. 1:12-28. So she's giving her references. The Vedic definition of knowledge and wisdom explains both the phenomenal, material, and numinous, spiritual aspects of encompassing. In other words, everything you can see and everything you can't see is explained. Because we have limited senses. That doesn't mean that there's nothing beyond what we can perceive with our senses. There's plenty of things beyond that. But we're limited in our range of experience, normal experience. But our range of experience and realization and consciousness can expand through spiritual knowledge of Srimad Bhagavatam. Jnana, or theoretical knowledge, comes from the study of the Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. From such sources of bona fide literature, one can come to understand the three levels of self-realization. These are understanding that the body and the material field of activities are temporary, and that the living entity is actually separate from the body. As the eternal soul. Okay, so you have an eternal soul. It's different than the temporary material body. And then understanding that within the body there's another knower who is the super soul, who exists in all living entities. Correct? Number 3, understanding that the material world, the body, the individual soul, the supersoul, and everything to ever come into existence are all energies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the cause of all causes. Okay, so that is a more complete understanding of jnana, theoretical knowledge. The above-mentioned points are all theoretical knowledge, but application of such knowledge begins when one accepts a bona fide spiritual master and begins to practice loving devotional service. This is known as vijnana, which is also described as the most confidential knowledge, or king of all knowledges. In Bhagavad Gita 9.2, Krishna explains what real knowledge is or was, or vijnana is. This Raja Vidya is the culmination of devotional service. This knowledge is the kind of king, the most secret of all secrets, and it is the purest knowledge, and because it gives direct perception of the self by realization. It is the perfection of religion, it is everlasting, and it is joyfully performed. Okay, very good. So that's 9th chapter, 2nd verse. In Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.4, 15 and 16, Lord Chaitanya, the merciful incarnation of Lord Krishna, explains how this perfect wisdom can be attained. This process of attaining wisdom is outlined here. So wisdom, jnana, means the same thing. Vijnana means the same thing. I'm sorry, wisdom or vijnana. So real vijnana. In Bhakti Rasamrita 1.4.15 to 16, Lord Chaitanya, the merciful incarnation of Lord Krishna, explains how this perfect wisdom can be attained. This process of attaining wisdom is outlined below. So, first step, adho shraddha. At first, there should be some little bit of faith that these Hare Krishnas, I like them, they sing, they dance, they give out free food, I want to associate with them. And then one comes into association with devotees, and then the faith gets very strong based on experience and based on the statements of the Vedas, and they develop more strength, and then they pass the test, and then after that, they want to associate with devotees. That's the main point. That's the beginning, because they like the behavior of the devotees. And then, by that constant association with devotees, or sadhu sangha, then they learn about Krishna consciousness, and in the process of learning about Krishna consciousness, they learn also the absolute importance of having bona fide Shiksha and Diksha gurus. And therefore they take initiation from a Diksha guru, and they continue education with the Diksha guru and Shiksha gurus, who are equal in importance. And due to their guidance and constant instructions, they begin to clear away all their bad habits, anartha nivriti. So adho shraddha, first there's a little bit of appreciation of devotees' behavior, and then the sadhu sangha is associating with the devotees, and then through sadhu sangha is bhajana kriya, or engagement for the spiritual master, and then after that, of course, there's spiritual masters, Shiksha and Diksha gurus, and then after that, they get rid of all their bad habits and desires and so forth. Then they attain nishta, firm faith, and they're continuing on the path of Krishna consciousness is unwavering. It's very staunch. And then, because of that, they develop ruchi. Ruchi means a real taste for chanting and hearing about Krishna and associating with devotees. And then they develop ashakti, attachment to Krishna. They feel they can't get along unless they have darshan at least once a day. Krishna's beautiful, shining face. And then ashakti, they develop this taste in ruchi, and in ashakti, they develop strong attachment to Krishna consciousness. And from ashakti, one develops bhava, developing feelings for the Lord. And then from that, one develops pure love for Krishna, the highest stage. So these are different states of elevation of consciousness. Okay, so thus by the slow process of devotional service, Shrestha writes, under the guidance of the bona fide spiritual master and masters, one can attain the highest stage, being freed from all material attachment. Well, yes, but you'd also have to add being free of all material attachment and replacing those attachments with attachments to Krishna and working only to please the Lord through one's practical service. One must therefore follow the teachings of the Vedas and take up devotional service under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master to attain real knowledge and wisdom, jnana and vijnana, opposed to the material conception of bondage. The materialists spend much time and money to study their concept of knowledge. They only realize that they have achieved they only realize that all they have achieved is ignorance. This is because they do not base their knowledge on Krishna, who is eternal, blissful, and all-knowledgeable, Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay, so very good. And then next, look up the 4 universal principles of spirituality, then connect them to the 4 regulative principles. And this is reference 1:16:20. Yeah, so actually, I should have also told you about 1:17:38. I'm sorry, 1:17:35. 1:17:35. Why did I say 38? Yeah, 1:17:35. No, I'm sorry. 1:17:38. Excuse me. 1:17:38. Okay. So now, let's take a look at Let's take a look. I think last week or the week before we did Shaitan. So let's take a look at Sanmukh. Anyway, 1:17. Let's wait a minute. We have to finish Shrestha's homework. I'm sorry. So, yeah. Look up the 4 universal principles of spirituality, then connect them to the 4 regulative principles. So, as I said a little earlier, this is specifically spoken of in 1:17:38. There's some things in 1:16, whichever one it was, 20. 1:16:20. But there's more information in 1:17:38. Okay. Yeah, so here, Shrestha writes, the 4 universal principles of spirituality, the pillars of religion, are cleanliness, austerity, truthfulness, and mercy. There are also 4 regulative principles, that is, when broken, incur sinful reactions. These sinful reactions occur because of breaking a specific regulative principle ultimately leads to destroying a specific pillar of religion. And specifically, illicit sex destroys cleanliness, correct? Intoxication destroys austerity. Not quite right, although I may have spoken about this before. I want to correct it today. Gambling destroys truthfulness. Yes, gambling and speculation destroys truthfulness. And meat eating destroys mercy. Not exactly right. So intoxication destroys mercy. Pride, which leads to meat eating, because one, out of pride and feeling of superiority, may kill animals and eat them, destroys austerity. Okay? So pride destroys austerity. Gambling destroys truthfulness. Illicit sex destroys cleanliness. And intoxication destroys mercy. So Prabhupada says the basic principle of irreligiosity, and this is 1738, the basic principle of irreligiosity, or sinfulness, such as pride, prostitution, intoxication, and falsehood, counteract the four principles of religion, namely austerity, cleanliness, mercifulness, and truthfulness. Okay. Austerity, cleanliness, truth, mercy, and truthfulness. Okay, so we have pride, prostitution, intoxication, falsehood, and austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness. The personality of Kali was given permission to live in four places particularly mentioned by the king, namely the place of gambling, the place of prostitution, the place of drinking, and the place of animal slaughter. But because such places did not exist in the time of Maharaj Parikshit, therefore Kali asked for another place. And he finally said that place where the gold is hoarded or hidden. But wherever the gold is hidden, people engage in breaking these four principles also. Okay. So Shrestha writes, according to Srila Prabhupada in the purport of 1:1620, since Dharma, or the principles of religion, would be lost in the proportion of 3 out of 4, that's in Kali Yuga, the symbolic bull was standing on one leg only. When 3/4 of the population of the whole world becomes irreligious, the situation is converted into hell for the animals and for the human beings. In the age of Kali, goddess civilizations will create so many so-called religious societies in which the personality of Godhead will be directly or indirectly defied. Well, that's the Mayavadis, and it's a whole bunch of other phony religions. And thus, faithless societies of men will make the world uninhabitable for the saner society, or the saner section of people. Okay. Since the people in this age have a higher propensity towards breaking the four regulative principles, it becomes harder and harder to find people with the principles of spirituality. As a result, Mother Earth has become burdened by the sinful men who, although unqualified, take up roles as leaders of the world. Correct statement. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advises that the best way to get rid of the sinful activities of Kali Yuga and uphold the pillars of religion, four universal principles of spirituality, is by performing Harinama Sankirtana, which is the prescribed duty for this yuga. According to Srila Prabhupada in the purport of Srimad Bhagvatam 1:1620, Lord Chaitanya, however, has recommended only one yagya or sacrifice called for Sankirtan yagya, the chanting of Hare Krishna, in which everyone can take part. Thus, both devotees and fruitive workers can derive equal benefit from the performances of Sankirtan Yagya. Okay, very good, Shrestha. And then she answers what is first-degree murder, second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and manslaughter. Okay, so now we're going to go to Sanmukh. And he explains Brahmapucham first, from the Taittiriya Upanishad 2.5. And he says, to attain the highest perfection of life, one needs to follow the path of Brahman realization. Well, there are 5 levels of this Brahman realization. So we see here a very important point, that is, that the Mayavadis, just like the material scientists and philosophers, give incomplete definitions of words. It's the same words that we use every day, but they give their incomplete definitions by canceling out Krishna from the equation. And we'll see an example of that now. Like, for example, the when we're talking about Brahman realization, Mayavadis say it's realization of the light, energy. They don't mention Krishna. They don't mention that. They misinterpret